The 1991 midterm election results in the unprecedented election of a veto-proof Republican legislature.
Right.
And you become state treasurer.
Yep.
So, let's talk about these 2 years.
Okay.
You have to come up with a budget, a Florio administration budget that you know is going to be rejected out of hand the minute that you present it to this particular legislature. Walk us through the first couple of months of trying to piece together what would have been the fiscal year '93, I guess, budget, the one that would have to be passed by June 30th of '92
Right.
by what is now a Republican-dominated legislature.
Well, it was an interesting process because as a member of the executive branch and not the legislative branch, we get to propose, they dispose. But one of the things I had going for me is the new chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee was Senator Littell, who had been on the Joint Appropriations Committee the entire time I worked for the legislature. Mm-hmm. And even though I didn't serve him, I worked for the Democratic staff, the members of that committee got to know each other. And they might have disagreements, but they also work things out on a minor level. A bunch of ministerial stuff kind of was agreed to.
Yeah, I should point out that Senator Littell was a little further right than most of the members of the Republican Party of New Jersey, most of the senators of the Republican Party of New Jersey.
Verbally, yes, but at the end of the day, he knew that the government had to be run. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the chairman of the Assembly Committee is now Congressman Freelandheisen, also a member of the Joint Appropriations Committee of long standing, and who I got to know through that process. So the one benefit that the only thing I had going for me as treasurer was that I knew I had a relationship with these two men and their staffs, because remember their staffs followed them to the Joint Appropriations. So we all knew each other. Mm-hmm. And that's the time when the Star Ledger used to write a story every day that we'd go to dinner after hearing days, and they would complain about the money being spent on us eating. But what happened is everybody got to know each other. And so on a lot of levels, you didn't start with, hi, my name's Sam Crane and who the hell are you? You started with, hi, Senator, how are you? Or hi, Assemblyman, or Mr. Chairman. And so their staff and I knew each other. They represented their point of view, as they should. But we started off with some kind of a personal relationship, which I think made it easier. They were going to repeal the sales tax because Chuck Hytan was determined to do it.
Chuck Hytan was the new Assembly Speaker.
And somebody who I grew to respect, because as much as I thought he was wrong, and as much as we may have had some colorful conversations about state fiscal matters, when Chuck gave his word he would do something, he'd do it. And it was a great experience because I could, and if I gave my word to him, I never broke it. Because I realized that that was the bond that allowed a lot of other things to happen while we were fighting over the sales tax, because you had the rest of the government. And so that year we had the sales tax fight, and it was what it was. We ended up cushioning the cuts. We didn't do as badly. Budget passed pretty much on time. There was a lot of back and forth. The next one was much more difficult than that one.
This was the sales tax had been increased from 6 to 7%.
Correct.
In the Florio's in the first 2 years, and had also been applied to a number of items that it hadn't previously been applied to. So now the movement in the legislature is to repeal that, to bring it back to 6%, and to remove it from the items that had been placed on, right?
On some of them.
On some of them, okay. Toilet paper
Well,
being
well,
the
what
obvious
is interesting
example.
is the story can be written today that of the famous $2.8 billion taxes, they repealed less than 800 of it.
800 million.
800 million. The rest of it stayed in place because they couldn't do it because of the recession. They needed the money. In order to do the sales tax cut, they couldn't undo the rest of it. And so that it gets turned on its head in the rewriting of history that they repealed the Florio tax plan. They did not. They repealed one part of it.
Actually, it didn't, the income tax part of it didn't get repealed until Whitman was elected, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, 2 years
And
after
only a
that.
portion of it.
Right. But my recollection is that Governor Florio vetoed the budget. Was that the following year, or was
No,
that?
the first year.
The first
We vetoed the budget, they overrode us.
Right.
And part of that was the governor couldn't say, I unnecessarily raised this tax. This was a political decision. I think it was probably the right one at the time. That we said, look, we needed it. We said we needed it. And frankly, we still did. Because we then started to bleed the government. I got a call a year and a half after I was out of office by the head of the transition team for Treasury, who called to thank me for thinning down the Department of Treasury. He never thought that the Treasury Department or any department in state government would be smaller when we left. We had fundamentally reduced the size of state government, which made the public employee unions mad at Jim too. So, I mean, he had it coming from all sides at that point. But he was managing in a fiscally responsible way. And we ended up with a fairly fiscally responsible budget. The next year was harder because it was an election year, and that all the politics was out because it was a gubernatorial year, and that's when it was really rugged.
Really? And I didn't recall that the following fiscal year was more difficult. Maybe that was because there wasn't the cutback on the sales tax anymore. This was now.
We reduced the size of, we were laying people off.
Yeah, I do
and
remember
it
that.
was tough. And it's tough to lay people off, and it's tough to lay off people in the state government with bumping and civil service and union roles is the most difficult part of it.